I'm Nick Connard, an archaeologist originally from the States. I've been working at the University of Tübingen since 1995 and have dug archaeological sites, especially from the Stone Age, in a lot of places. Here at Sibudu, we've been digging since 2011 every year. One of the COVID years we weren't able to dig, so we had a study season. But this is the 15th season, and after 15 years, we're finished. This is literally the last day at the site. Literally, after today, all we're going to do is refill the site. We have one stratigraphic profile that Most and I are documenting, and then we're done, completely done. We're in the eastern excavation. This is the youngest part of the site. And we have here, this red layer is an Iron Age packed earth floor, right? So it's a really great stratigraphic marker. Then we've got a number of layers in alphabetical order. The sequence starts with Aaron Mazel, the first excavator of the site. We have another A layer, Aurora, named after our zooarchaeologist, Aurora Wahl. The next layer is Bilbo Baggins, Bill. Then Britt Starkovich, who works on the crew, studying things like bone tools. Then we have Christian Barnard, the heart transplant guy. Chrissy Sievers, who worked at the site studying the botany. Then we have Desmond Tutu. And this last layer is Doja Cat, which lies upon Elvis Presley. We have a clear rock fault here in Britt, then CHB, Christian Barnard, Chrissy Sievers, Desmond Tutu. The yellow pins are at the bottom of Desmond Tutu. And this last layer was a very rich layer, Doja Cat, and that's then right above Elvis Presley, where we started in 2011. So this is what we've done the last couple of years. We had amazing Iron Age finds and really fabulous final MSA layers, late MSA layers, and then came upon the stratigraphic layers of what we call the Sibudan complex. And now we have the complete sequence, and I think, as you know, we hit bedrock a few days ago in the deep sounding, and that's why we're stopping. We have a great sequence all the way from the top of the site until bedrock. There's nothing left to do except study the material.
My name is Mohsen Saidi. I'm from Iran, but I did my PhD with Professor Konrad at the University of Tübingen in Germany. And since they started the Sibudu project in 2011, I was helping the project as a researcher. This is the oldest deposit at Sibudu, at least 100,000 years ago, and even a bit older. And as I said, the sediment is really wet, so we don't have any organic remains like charcoal and bone. That is very unfortunate. But we have a lot of lithic artifacts, and they are mostly large flakes and cores made on sandstone, dolerite, hornfels, and sometimes quartzite from nearby. I mean, the sources are very close to the site.
Hi, my name is Sibonisiwe Gumede. I'm from Gwabe Chapel Authority. Basically, I'm a princess. Isibudu Cave is under the jurisdiction of the Gwabe Chapel Authority. It was used as shelter or hiding places during the times of wars and as a hunting camp. It was also used as storage where they stored materials like medicines, poisons, shell beads, and arrows. They made their own body decoration using shell beads, well known in our culture as ubuhlali. They handmade ubuhlali for decoration and also to cover some part of their bodies.
One of the most fundamental questions that has interested people for millennia is, what are humans and where do we come from? Traditionally, people look to the scriptures and talk about, man being made from a lump of clay, or Eve from Adam's rib. But we scientists don't focus on the scriptures, but focus on empirical observations, right? Where do modern humans come from? The unambiguous answer is from Africa. There are abundant studies documenting that based on contemporary genetics and also based on a wide range of biological arguments. And also, of course, the oldest fossil examples of modern humans all come from Africa. So there's really not much doubt about that. And so the easiest way of looking at it is to say, well, we have modern humans going back to 300,000 years ago, and certainly by 40,000 years ago, modern humans were everywhere. And maybe, even in Australia quite a bit earlier, 50,000, maybe 55,000 years ago. Where we're working in Europe, the shift comes about 43,000 years ago. It depends where you are. South Africa is unique because it has a number of extremely well-preserved sites with a very long sequence from the last 100,000 years or so that corresponds to the time when people with our physical form, our skeletal form and physical capabilities become unambiguously present in the record. Everyone is ultimately of African origins, even if they had a little interbreeding with Neanderthals and Denisovans. So that's why we talk about the out of Africa hypothesis. That's why we say we are all Africans, we all have African origins. I think, at least from my point of view, that has a whole range of political implications, right? We're all in one boat together. To say, oh, you're so different than me, it's kind of a, kind of primitive way of looking at it. I would tend to think about what are all the things we share. If I think about Sabuto, the craft of being an archaeologist, what really stands out to me is we're digging this deep sequence, about 6 meters deep, and every layer is so rich. And every bucket has interesting finds, especially lithic finds, but faunal materials, all sorts of things. And we have thousands and thousands of buckets, and every one, let's say it might take us, depending on the situation, maybe an hour to excavate a bucket. And then to sort it can take a whole day because there's so much in it. And then to process the finds takes forever. And I can't think of, off the top of my head, I know sites where you have layers like that, but here the whole site's like that, incredibly rich. There's also botanical preservation. There's also good faunal preservation for the most part. And the lithics are amazing. All classes of material without any gaps through the sequence. Other than the rocks from the ceilings and walls of the cave, mostly what we find, we call anthropogenic. It's from people. All of these sites, Sabuto is kind of the baseline because Sabuto has a 6 meter sequence. No site is complete. No site has everything. Everything represents what is playing out here at this location. But by far the most complete stratigraphy that we have is Sabuto.
It gives us much broader insights on how our ancestors lived, the things that they used, their creativity, knowledge, skills, as they were using their hands. They knew which plant to mix in order to make medicine, poison, etc. It also serves as an educational site where we learn more about the ancient times.
Sabuto is a very important site for the Middle Stone Age. The Stone Age in southern Africa and Africa in general is divided into 3 very long and very important units. The earlier Stone Age covers a couple million years. Then somewhere in the neighborhood of 300,000 years ago, we get to the Middle Stone Age. And somewhere in the neighborhood of 30 or 40,000 years ago, we get to the later Stone Age, which takes us all the way up to the period where agriculturalists and herders came into southern Africa a couple of thousand years ago, and then later different kinds of European explorers and settlers came. But we also have Iron Age deposits at the top, really amazing. Right now where we're working, an Iron Age floor, we have a wooden mortar, and so that's at the very top of the sequence. And then we go directly into the Middle Stone Age, somewhere in the neighborhood of 35, 40,000 years ago. And from then we can track everything back to 100,000, maybe as far back as 120,000 years ago.
The last dating result suggests 100,000. we usually use OSL, which covers more than older than 40,000 years ago. And younger than 40,000, we always use C14 or carbon 14.
Radiocarbon.
Yeah, radiocarbon that covers after 40,000, and we always use charcoal. But for OSL, we always use sediment. Of course, you never get like 100% sure. It's always ranges, but this is for now the most accurate method that we can use for these old deposits.
Sedges from the river bottom were very frequently harvested, and the whole surface of this excavation here, several tens of square meters, would then be covered with mats. Sometimes they're referred to as bedding because people could sleep on them as well. And then periodically, it seems like they would just be completely torched to kind of clean the site, get rid of all the vermin or whatever else might have been in those mats, and then new matting was cut and spread across the site, and this happened over and over and over again. The typical interpretation of ochre is that it allows you to get different kinds of red pigments, and the red pigments you can use for many purposes. But it's not only a pigment, it can also be ground and used to help make adhesives, to glue things together, and make what are referred to as composite tools. And Lynn Wadley and colleagues were able to show that often, if you had a stone tool, part of it is covered with red ochre, and that's the part that was buried in the haft. And then the part sticking out without the red ochre was the part that was used for practical purposes. Yes, we're in the subtropical zone of KZN. It hasn't changed that much. We see certain phases of occupation where equids, horses, zebras are here, where you have a more open environment. But in general, it was a fairly dense subtropical vegetation. We tend to see the same animals throughout the sequence. Also the same birds. Interestingly, we don't have that many. We have occasional fish variants, but not many. Also the sound, right? The sound of the Tongati River flowing, that had to have been the same, right? There are many, many things that link the physical reality of this site today with the past.
The cave is the connection between us and our ancestors. They were our people, led by the chief of the Kwabe tribe. They were our ancestors, they still are, by the way. Our heroes who lost their lives fighting for the Kwabe kingdom, and everyone who lived and still lives on the Kwabe land.
The charm of coming to Sibudu is, first you got to get down the hill.
Yes.
You have a 4x4. We, try to economize. We don't have a 4x4. If you're not a good driver, you're not going to make it. And then you walk down to the river, and then, believe me, there are days you cannot get across the river. Just last week, the river was a torrent. There's been quite a bit of rain this year. It's a bit of an adventure. Then you get across the river. You have to walk in the river valley to the cliff. You have to climb up the cliff. Just getting to the site's an adventure. Just like today, all human beings are fundamentally of equal importance, right? And so I would argue that we can choose any time period and get very close to the lives of individual people. We can scale up from that and move from, let's say, individuals napping stone or butchering an animal or working ochre or wearing certain kinds of ornaments or even disposing their dead or at least losing teeth here at the site. And we can scale up and say, well, what do we see in this whole time period that might represent a generation or a few generations or hundreds of years or thousands of years, or in this case, tens of thousands of years or maybe 100,000 years. And we can see in extreme detail how that plays out.
This search will definitely boost the local economy. It will create so many jobs, opportunity for our people. It will be a meeting point for people who will come visit and enjoy the site. As there are plans of constructing hotels, restaurants, etc. near the cave.
And we try to do a lot of outreach. We're training site guides to be able to explain the site to people in the future and trying to find the right balance between protecting the site and making it available to people who want to learn about the site. School kids can come here and learn about the past of the region. People from the Durban schools could come here or from around the world. At the same time, I don't decide any of these things. I'm just a scientist guest in the region. But the Utangati River is so beautiful, right? If we can maybe elevate the water quality a little bit and preserve the nature in the area, it's so spectacular here. It's really beautiful. I'm a little hesitant to do any major infrastructure changes. The site has so much going for it, and I really think most people would agree it's one of the most important sites for this time period anywhere in Africa and anywhere in the world, and that's why it was granted UNESCO World Heritage status. The main criteria for World Heritage status is outstanding universal value. And outstanding universal value means outstanding universal value for every single person on the planet Earth. So anyone on the planet Earth, whether you're in the Mona village across the river, in Durban, in Cape Town, Joburg, Cairo, Paris, Tokyo, New York, wherever you are, the Kalahari, Zibuto is important for every single person to learn about where human beings come from, our shared heritage, and how we define being human. So that's very satisfying and something I'm extremely proud of.